It's about time all of you realized that we are living in a comedy, not a tragedy. It's like the Joker says, right? It's meant to be funny. Like this story from Vice, where they say survivors of the riot at the Capitol, or insurrection, what do they call it? And they actually have a quote from a journalist who nearly cries because some crackpot with the horned helmet walked inside a building. It's truly incredible. We live in a reality TV trash hell world. There's no serious debate. The left, the mainstream, the establishment, they have gone completely insane. And right now, the only thing that matters is owning the libs or owning the cons or whatever. Quite literally, we have this story. It went viral yesterday. And I didn't care to talk about it, but we really got to trash CNN and the New York Times and Vice News. And this one hits close to home. Why? I was the founding member of Vice News, employee number one brought on to make Vice News a thing. So angry. Reporters who survived the Capitol riot are still struggling. This is real life. My favorite, though, I have to be honest, is the guy who nearly cries because he's scared to go back to one of the most secure buildings in the world that was surrounded by security fencing and National Guard members, and has Capitol Police setting up field offices around the country to hunt down many of these dotards who were bumbling around confused inside the Capitol building. Let's get one thing straight. It's not all. There's a lot of people saying, oh, the cops let everybody in. It wasn't an insurrection. Okay, well, let's be reasonable. There was violence. A lot of it. These videos were crazy. There was tear gas in the rotunda. There people, pulling barricades away. There was violence. And you see what CNN does and what Vice does is that they show everyone these videos and they say, oh no, democracy is under attack. What they don't show you is the cops opening the door and saying, right this way, sir or madame. Because it was a riot. That's about it. It's funny that they call it an insurrection. At the same time, Joe Biden's like, come on, man, if you want to go up against the government, you need F-15s or nukes. Yeah, that would imply that if these people actually were able to take the Capitol building, Joe Biden would nuke them or call in an airstrike with some F-15s. That's stupid. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. But let's be real. These people never had any chance of taking power in any way. This is not the 1600s. You do not assert political dominance by simply occupying a building. It doesn't work that way. And even back then, you'd still have to subdue the enemy forces. A bunch of unarmed dudes with flags walking in a building does not an insurrection make. So for these journalists who are crying, wow, dude, you need to find a different line of work. Quote, it's my office, the building I love most in the effing world. I used to call the Capitol my girlfriend. I've devoted 15 years of my goddamn life to that building, said freelance reporter Matt Laszlo, choking up. Now, I don't want to be there. Bro, wow. Fire this guy immediately. Matt, you will never, not that you'd want to, but I would never offer you any kind of meaningful work. Dude, seriously? Riots, real ones, where the far left is smashing windows, where they brutally beat Andy No. That I understand. A consistent threat and problem where you say, I can't go out there anymore. Did I cry and choke up saying the streets used to be my office? I used to go out on the ground and travel the world, but now I can't anymore. No, I say, well, sometimes it gets too dangerous and people start to recognize you too much and it becomes impossible to actually do the job. This guy's crying because one time a bunch of unarmed people walked into a building. That's it. Crying. Man, let me show you this tweet from Lindsay Snell. Lindsay actually covers serious conflict and has been kidnapped in the past. This is in response to a tweet from Glenn Greenwald, which is a quote from Brian Stelter. But oh boy. Vice News tweeted, I love this image. Reporters who survived the deadly Capitol riot are still struggling. Some won't go back in the building. Several have sought therapy to deal with trauma. Many still aren't sleeping well. I just gotta pause. If that is our country, we don't deserve to preserve this name. I'm sorry. If our journalist class and our average person is scared to go in a building because they're traumatized. Yikes. We have truly become a nation of soft, pathetic weaklings. As they say, weak men make hard times make strong men make good times. So perhaps this is the fourth turning. Perhaps we are in the crisis. Things are going to get bad because a bunch of weak, doughy men, people like Brian Stelter, who responded with, "I wish I'd thought to write this story by Cam Joseph. Don't miss it." People like him are the ones who are in the mainstream media. Now, Lindsay Snell, who actually knows conflict, said, "I feel like Western journalists who cover real conflicts sometimes milk the trauma danger card. But this is absurd. Perhaps these reporters are just in the wrong line of work." Wrong line of work indeed. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I've been in full-scale warfare. I have not covered, I was not on the ground in Syria. I was on the ground in Egypt, as most of you know. I was in Ukraine. I was in Venezuela. I've been in Brazil. I've been detained by plainclothes cops in undisclosed locations where we thought we were going to get beat up. I was chased out of Venezuela after being accused of being a spy. I was briefly detained by a bunch of Ukrainian activists who were demanding to know who we were. I've had Molotov cocktails held to my face by Turkish anarchists fighting with cops, threatening us with immolation. And hey, look, I don't speak Turkish, man. I've been in danger. And a lot of people say it was stupid. It was parachute journalism. Perhaps. By all means, criticize parachute journalism. That's the idea that you as a reporter enter a place you know very little about and start talking about what's going on. Literally, well, for the most part, what I did. Of course, we'd always have fixers and guides. And the idea was that I would be a relatable conduit so that these experts on the ground, the fixers, I mean, somebody's there who's guiding us, could be explaining, and then I could be relaying my experience. I think it's a good thing. Some people don't, but I respect that argument. I really do. You have people who live in an area. They'll move there, live there for years, and start reporting. And then you'll have locals who live there and report. That I respect. Even within these own conflicts, I never broke down and cried or choked up. I've been in vehicles with extremists armed to the teeth where we thought we were being kidnapped and had to jump out of the vehicle. These people, freelancer in a building, and some guy with horns and a flag comes in, and now you're scared to go back in. This is why journalism is dead. It is a bunch of spineless, doughy jellyfish. That's what I can say. Let's read a little bit of this. Oh, I love it. So angry. Reporters who survived the Capitol riot are still struggling. Struggling? From what, dude? Wow. Josh Bresnahan spent January 6th watching a pro-Trump insurrection ransack the building he's worked in for decades. Okay, hold on. I just got to say this. Everything I just explained about the threats I faced was at Vice. We were constantly joking about who was going to die first. I'm not kidding. So many people were sent into insane, dangerous locations when I was at Vice that we would be like, how long do you think it's going to be till someone dies? And who do you think it's going to be? And some people are like, it's going to be you. Because some of these people are just going and meeting with drug lords and cartel members to interview them. You're actually going into the fight. And I'm like, how about that? Yeah. Now Vice News is like, they're still struggling. Vice, you are so pathetic. You know what, man? I don't know what happened to Shane Smith. I know the guy, the CEO of Vice. I remember being there. I remember him being one of the most brutal, no BS businessmen. But I guess that's it. I guess you would like to see your name become this pathetic level of garbage. I mean, they went to North Korea, these Vice guys. Shane himself went to North Korea. They went to Ukraine and fired at radioactive warthogs, wild hogs, whatever you want to call them. Now this is what they produce. Talk about failed legacy, man. I can't blame them, though. Look, at a certain point, I suppose you lose control of what you build. And some people say, Tim, you're building timcast.com. What's to stop it from turning into CNN? And I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know. I know that we're gonna build it upon certain principles, but I mean, Breitbart sort of. I don't know the early stages of Breitbart, but they still do their thing, So we'll see. But talk about a whole new level of pathetic. I want to point something out too. The journalists who survived. Yeah, what about Richie McGinnis? The New York Times had to issue a correction on January 11th. They labeled Daily Caller journalist a Capitol Hill rioter. It's amazing. And instead of issuing an apology saying this was in fact a journalist we called a rioter, they said he works for a right-wing website. I think they called him a videographer too. What did they say? Shirtless man, he was a videographer working for the Daily Caller. Amazing. They won't say journalist. Why? Because we are in a culture war. Vice, the New York Times, will not give you the semantics you deserve. They will not call you a journalist. They'll call you an activist or an extremist, or if they have to correct, a videographer. But heaven forbid, you get the J word, journalist. That's their title. Only they can say it. Here we go. The congressional reporting veteran was in the House gallery when a colleague texted him that the Capitol's exterior security fence had been overrun. As soon as he stepped into the hallway, he heard the roar of a crowd as they warred with police officers trying to protect the Capitol's perimeter. He then saw MAGA-clad assailants try to smash open the east doors of the Capitol into the rotunda before officers with M16 rifles screamed at him to clear the area. Bresnahan moved to a perch on the floor above Statuary Hall, watching for an hour as rioters flooded through an entrance door they had broken open. At one point, he ran downstairs to help an officer back to his feet who'd been knocked down in a scuffle with rioters. He said he only felt personally threatened once during the insurrection when rioters briefly cut off his exit route. Richie McGinnis was crammed in the fray. A journalist. We've had him on the IRL podcast. He was in the fray, smashed between police and protester, rioter. And he was filming it. And the dude ain't traumatized. He's hanging out. He's laughing. He didn't cry. Who are these pathetic losers? We're going to do this. We have to name and shame. John Bresnahan. Well, he's not saying he felt very threatened. So let's just say Vice may be hamming it up. It was unlike anything Bresnahan had seen in his nearly 3 decades on the Hill. But what stunned him most came hours later, once the rioters were dispersed. As tear gas still wafted through parts of the Capitol with broken glass and blood staining the building, the House reconvened to certify Biden's Electoral College victory. And a majority of House Republicans voted against confirming his wins in Arizona and Pennsylvania. That was the thing that surprised me most of this entire day. They'd just gone through this, and they were still effing objecting. You know, you may have heard me tell the story about when I was wrongly arrested and charged with disorderly conduct. I told the story in the IRL podcast recently with Michael Malice. They wanted me to plead guilty. And they said I could walk, basically. Just plead guilty and we'll give you 21 hours of community service. And I said no. I did nothing wrong and I refuse. Give me the maximum penalty on principle. I refuse to plead guilty to a crime I did not commit. The judge was shocked and he said, why won't they just plead guilty? And our lawyer responded, Your Honor, because they're innocent. And the judge went, case dismissed. That's right. Maybe the reason I refused to back down was because I was innocent. Maybe the reason the Republicans refused to vote to certify had nothing to do with them being scared of rioters. Maybe they were standing on principle, rioter be damned. You see how that works? Or, I guess some of them were probably just scared of their constituents. That's probably fair to say as well. Bresnahan, a Navy veteran who has covered Congress since 94 and co-founded the D.C. newsletter Punchbowl News, said returning to the Capitol after the riots was difficult. Okay, now we get to make fun of you for being a loser. The next day I was so angry. It was difficult. Seriously? I went back to Berkeley several times, even after they threatened me and posted pictures of my mom. I went back to Portland a couple times. Eventually I said, I can't keep showing up to these things because it wasn't just the far left that was recognizing me. It was also, everyone else. And it just became impossible to do the job. Reporters have discussed their personal experiences in the days immediately following the Capitol insurrection. But few have publicly talked about the lasting effects in the months since. The toll that day took on them. The difficulty some have faced in returning to a site where they experienced trauma. And what it's been like covering a Congress still deeply divided on the events of that day. I gotta pause and say, you know what? I get it. These guys are wads of cookie dough. They are jiggly little soft blobs. They're scared. They say, oh, please. Oh, no. I guess when you grow up on the south side of Chicago and gunshots ring through the night in your sleep, this kind of thing doesn't faze you all that much. But let's be real. You don't need to have grown up with gang conflict all around you to be a normal person not scared by a bunch of unarmed rioters carrying flags. You can say it was annoying or whatever, but you could. What are these people thinking is happening? They're nuts. This guy's a Navy veteran. Then I can only assume he's lying to ham it up. Otherwise, wow, the Navy really is trash, isn't it? They say, though the physical reminders of the Capitol riot are slowly being erased, the 26,000 National Guard troops who flooded the building for inauguration are long gone. The heavy-duty security fence is down, and the final perimeter exterior fence will begin to come down on Thursday. Small details remain. A shattered plastic guard sits on one of the officers' desks, and a few broken windows haven't been replaced. House members still have to go through metal detectors to vote. And the emotional scars are still there. Wow, I want to give a round of applause to Vice News for historically sending people with no security or even inoculations into extremely dangerous areas and then being like, oh, when people were like, are they going to die? And what are you going to do for them? And now complaining that someone's fifis were hurt because a guy with horns walked in a building. Wow, some reporters who were there won't go back in the building. A number have sought therapy to deal with the trauma. One longtime Capitol Hill reporter opted for early retirement shortly after living through the riot. Many still aren't sleeping well. Good. Y'all are insane, spineless, and pathetic. Let's get some real journalists back on the beat. Let's get people who actually can withstand loud noises and a riot. Talk about pathetic. I was shot at on more than one occasion in Ferguson. Now, let me clarify. Bullets were shot that traveled in my general direction on more than one occasion when I was in Ferguson. At one point, everybody just dropped to the floor. You didn't have time to crouch. There were moments during Ferguson where we heard gunshots and we get down. Within a split second, we're down on the ground. No. There was one point where the bullets were flying over our heads, so I literally belly flopped on the ground. Just smack straight to the ground. You don't have time to think. You get down, and you can hear the whiz crack past your head and smack that building. Somebody got shot in the stomach. The police at one point ran up as we heard doof, 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 bullets flying in our direction. Go, go, go. I had to jump a fence, breathing in tear gas. I started to pass out because I inhaled too much tear gas. Displaced the oxygen. Tunnel vision. I fell down. Some young kid splashed water on my face. Inhale, reflex from the water on my face. It was an experience, to say the least. Did I cry? No. At the end of the day, I said, we did it. We got the footage. Who are these losers? This is a problem we have when you have such weakness in a country. You have no leaders. You know what? Imagine it this way. You've got a circle. And let's say there's a hard shell exterior. Strong, defensive, powerful. These are the hardened men and women who defended this country both on principle and physically for a long time. Within it are the soft, doughy cookie dough people. And they're only allowed to have all this luxury, freedom, and security because of those who stand up in defense of them. It's like that meme where it's like a man and a woman and they're holding hands and it's a beautiful field, but it's actually a cliff with a bunch of soldiers holding up the ground that they're standing on to make the point that you are entitled to this luxury and this comfort because people are defending you and your right to live that way. But because of this, the doughy people have become doughier, weaker, and the outer exterior shell that protects our community is breaking. And now the cookie dough people are on the border screaming at the top of their lungs like banshees because some guy with horns kicked in a door. I don't even think he kicked in the door. I'm being, making a metaphor, I guess, because he walked in the building. I'm still not sleeping like I used to, said PBS NewsHour correspondent Lisa Desjardins. I became kind of an insomniac. I'm sorry, man. Look, maybe I'm spoiled. Maybe I'm arrogant. But I don't relate to these people. I think we are in serious trouble as a country. If these are the people that we have, that dough balls, pancake batter, funnel cake, whatever you want to call it, I sleep like a rock. People like to say sleep like a baby, but babies wake up crying at night. So I don't sleep like a baby. I sleep like a rock. I lay down, I close my eyes, boom, I wake up in the morning. It's that simple. Have some crazy dreams sometimes. How about that? I don't know what it is that these people are so pathetic and terrifying. It's eerily back to normal, but sometimes it feels like one of those horror movies, like the end of Jaws. Everything feels copacetic on the beach, but you wonder if there's anything out there. That's amazing. I've gone back to many areas after the riots. When they burned down the entire city block in Ferguson, when I was in Baltimore and someone threw a glass bottle at me, we go back, we film. This is amazing. Here we go. The harder part for me is to know how emotional the lawmakers are, said Desjardins. It's like when you know your parents are bitterly abusively fighting, and you go into a room and can sense their hostility and can sense nobody's figured a way out. This isn't all new. The Trump years have exacerbated tension between the parties, blah, blah, blah. Making it through the day. It was traumatizing, he said. But he kept reporting. Okay. I'm impressed. Wasson was in the gallery overlooking the House. At the moment, rioters broke into the Capitol, filing reports for the pool of reporters who had banded together to share information during the pandemic. He realized something was wrong when lawmakers nearby got text alerts of a possible threat. Minnesota Democratic Rep Dean Phillips jumped to his feet and yelled down to Arizona Republican Rep Paul Gosar, who was speaking to object to certifying his state's votes. This is all because of you. Oh, how long until someone canes someone else in Congress? Officers barred the doors and told reporters and lawmakers trapped in the gallery to put on gas masks because tear gas had been deployed. Then the rioters started banging on the outside. When they busted through the window of the House floor with flagpoles, he thought they had guns and dove to the floor. Thinking that the rioters were going to start shooting shortly afterwards, he heard a shot outside. What later turned out to be the officer's bullet that killed rioter Ashley Babbitt. I'm pretty sure this is incorrect. He was on the House floor. The room that Ashley Babbitt was trying to enter was a large hallway, not the House floor. I think they're lying. There was a photo initially of people, of security guards, Capitol Police, at the doors to the House floor with aiming guns through the window. And many people thought that's what Ashley Babbitt tried climbing through. They were wrong. It turns out she wasn't. We don't know if she was trying to climb through, but she stood up and looked through the window of a long hallway. Then we were like, very early on, oh, she wasn't trying to break into the House floor. So who is this guy? What's he saying? Is it possible he's making it up? I think it is strongly possible this man is lying and making up a story. I'm going to tell you something. When I was younger, a plane crashed at Midway Airport. It was winter, and I believe it was a Southwest flight landing at Midway, and it skidded off the runway. Now, you got to understand, Midway Airport is about a square mile, which means their runway is diagonal, so it's not even a mile and a half, because they have to land over the wall, slam the brakes on. Taking off from Midway is actually really interesting because they have to maximize the engines and then slingshot into the air. There's very little room at Midway Airport for takeoff, surrounded by residential areas. So this plane skidded off the runway, crashed through the wall and smashed into the street, bounced up and slammed onto a car. Someone I knew who was not there ran full speed to there and then told the news he witnessed the whole thing and then just made it up. And they believed it and said, here's a witness. Is it possible this guy is doing just that? It seems like it because this story doesn't seem to be making sense. I shut my emotions. If I went down, I was going to go down fighting. I was going to do my job. He was back the next day, pressing House Speaker now. Oh, shut up. You were not traumatized. These people are just hamming it up and lying. I love it. The dude who says that he was choking up. I don't know if I can come back. Cry about it. You know what? Good. You shouldn't come back. This is our current state of journalism. This is what we get. Brian Stelter saying he wish he'd thought this story. He wish he'd thought to write this story. Molly Hemingway. All right, let's talk about this. From the Federalist said, people who call the few-hour riot at the Capitol by unarmed protesters an insurrection are bad people who are harming the country. That's a fact. Particularly so if they don't use the term for months-long violent coordinated attacks on White House, federal courthouses, small businesses, etc. Good point. Brian Stelter quotes, bad people who are harming the country. Where is she wrong, Brian, says Sean O. in the replies. Brian Stelter is one of the most awful, deceitful, evil people you will find in media. There's no reality to what he's saying. Listen, the leftists, we can have arguments. We can disagree. We can think that they're wrong about things. But Brian Stelter purposefully deceives. When he says things on his show like this is fake news, a conspiracy theory, or don't watch Fox News, his goal is to deceive you, to purposefully make you think wrong things. Because come on, we know Brian is savvy enough to Google search things. This is what we get. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.